is lesson 83 on page 173. So we talked about the old covenant, where that's when they had to slaughter the lambs, put the blood on their doorposts, eat everything, or they would have to burn it the next day, and then the angel of death, when it flew by, it passed over them. It saved their lives. And now we're going to talk about the new covenant. So on the night before Jesus was crucified on the cross, he and his disciples celebrated the Passover meal. Then Jesus told them about a new celebration and a new promise that replaced the old covenant, or the old promise of the Old Testament, and it started the New Testament and the Lord's Supper. So celebrating the Lord's Supper. So we've talked a lot about what the Lord's Supper is. It's the blood and the wine, and the bread and the body, and it is what reminds us what Jesus did for us. It gives us life, salvation, and forgiveness, or forgiveness, life, and salvation. Well, when we celebrate that, it's the new covenant, the new promise that God is going to save us. So last time we said the rescue with blood on wooden doorpost. Well, this time it's the rescue with blood on wooden. What did Jesus die on? He died on the wooden cross. Then last time it saved us from slavery in Egypt and from death. Well, this is going to save us from slavery to, what did Jesus die for? Jesus died for our sin, so we're no longer slaves to sin, and from eternal death. So it saves us from our sin and eternal death. Instead, we are forgiven and we get life with Jesus in heaven after we pass away. So the remembrance celebration every year, they did the Passover once a year. And communion, remembrance celebration every Sunday we are kind of reminded of communion. We may not partake in it every Sunday, but we are reminded that Jesus died on the cross every Sunday. And some churches partake every Sunday. A lot will do twice a month or every other week. But regardless, you're reminded that Jesus died for our sin every single Sunday. And then the meal. So the meal here was unleavened bread, wine, and the lamb. So here it's bread, wine, and much, much more. So instead of the lamb, it's the body plus the blood of Christ. So we still get bread and wine, but we get the body and blood. And in the Old Covenant, the promise was, I shall be your God and you shall be my people. The new promise is forgiveness, life, and salvation through Jesus' body and blood. So those are the three main words. We heard it in communion. We hear it in baptism. We are forgiven. We get life eternal in heaven. It's just great reminders. And so you might see these images in some churches. The lamb, that is the Lamb of God. I mean, it was there in the Old Covenant, and it's there in the New Covenant. And here, the cross, what Jesus did for us on the cross, he died with the wine and the bread, because that's kind of like a wheat you'd get from the bread and the grapevines. Okay, and the Bible words to remember. From John chapter 1, verse 29, Behold, the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. So in both covenants, new and old, it talks about the lamb. Here it's talking about actual lambs, but it's still, God is still there and present. And here it's metaphor, the lamb is a metaphor for the Lamb of God, Jesus Christ for us. So he takes away the sin of the world.